A few years ago, I covered the 5 fantastic 2D Metroid games, playing through Zero Mission, Samus Returns, Super Metroid, Fusion, and the stupendous Metroid Dread. I also covered Metroid Other M, the 2D-3D hybrid game, a not so good but still fun enough title developed by Team Ninja. Metroid has a long history of highly polished and fun titles that sadly don't sell particularly well. It's such a special series though. Whenever a new title releases, it's cause for celebration. But it's not just the 2D games that are celebrated. Of all the Nintendo franchises that have taken on the 3D realm so far, Metroid is one of the best. The 3D Prime series has been running now for nearly 25 years. And with 4 mainline titles, a remaster, a DS and 3DS side game, and even a pinball spin-off, the series has a great history to look back on. So it's time I did just that. Starting off with one of the greatest remasters of one of the greatest games of all time, this is Metroid Prime Remastered. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Pixel Tavern, and another series of Extravaganza, where this time I'll be making retrospectives for all the games in the Metroid Prime series. To keep informed of any new videos releasing, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon. The Metroid Prime series is one of the most renowned in the industry, and after 18 years of waiting, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond was released in December 2025. In the build-up to its release, I decided it was time to play through all the Prime games, and subsequently make a video on each of them too, kicking off with the best in the series, Metroid Prime Remastered. As with my other retrospectives, there are full spoilers ahead. First released on 18th of November 2002 for the GameCube, and then again in the Metroid Prime trilogy on 24th of August 2009 for the Wii, and then in its beautifully remastered version for Nintendo Switch on 8th of February 2023, which is the one I'm using for this video. It's one of Nintendo's, and even the general gaming industry's, most revered titles. Standing at a 97% Metacritic score for the original, and a 94 for the remaster, it shows that it has stood the test of time perfectly. And whether you are playing the nearly 25-year-old original or the remastered version, it is still an absolute blast to play. The adventure kicks off with Samus arriving on an abandoned space pirate frigate called the Orpheum, a research station that they use to experiment with a new substance called Phazon, found on the nearby planet of Talon 4. The story is set between the original Metroid and Metroid 2, so Metroids do still actually exist, and Mother Brain is still kicking around somewhere. On the Orpheum, they test on multiple creatures, such as the Parasite Queen, and even Samus's rival, Ridley. Here he takes on his Meta Ridley form, a cybernetic dragon who now leads the space pirates, and most likely needs these new parts after getting defeated by Samus in the first Metroid. After the Orpheum is damaged when Samus kills the Parasite Queen on board, it starts to explode and crash into Talon 4. She just barely escapes the explosion, but of course loses all of her suit upgrades in the process, mostly for there to be actual game progression. This has been a trope of Metroid since Metroid Prime and Fusion, which released the same day. But since these were the first games to do it, it feels more natural here than some of the later games. Samus then chases Ridley, who also escaped, down to Talon 4, where a meteorite struck 50 years ago and revealed the powerful Phazon that the space pirates harvest, which is also one of the key elements of the next 3 Metroid Prime games. This is where things really kick into high gear, and you quickly see how well Metroid translates into 3D. For me though, I think Prime may have been my first Metroid game, or it could have been Fusion. I can't really remember since both games came out on the same day, but I think Fusion I played a year later. Overall though, I didn't fully get into the series until Metroid Prime 3, so I guess this was probably my first experience of a Metroidvania style game. So what did I think of Prime 1 when I first played it? Well, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that when I was a kid back in the early 2000s, I was a little baby when it came to difficult or hard to navigate games, even struggling with fairly simple ones such as Wind Waker. At least at first anyway. So, a series notorious for getting lost in and a reasonably high difficulty level, you can probably guess what I thought of it. I absolutely loved it for about 2 hours until I couldn't figure out where to go, at which point I gave up and stopped playing. Do you ever look back at your childhood self and just wish you could tell them, this is one of the best games you're ever going to play, just look at the damn map screen, you idiot? Yeah, this might well be the first game I played that actually required you to use the map. I think I'd played some before that used one, but since my childhood didn't consist of RPGs or big adventure games, I didn't remember any that required you to actually pay attention to it. At least not until I'd played Wind Waker a few years later anyway. This was certainly my biggest mistake for Metroid Prime, as without the map you are pretty much lost to endless and aimless wandering around. I sadly just couldn't get into it back in 2002. I would get stuck not long after getting the charge beam, so I never got particularly far. It wasn't until the Metroid Prime trilogy several years later, and the strategy guide, that I finally played Prime 1 through to the finish. My first playthrough with a guide was okay. I enjoyed the game enough, but I found I enjoyed Metroid Prime 3 a lot more, which is a much more linear and easy to navigate world. However, when Metroid Prime Remastered got announced in 2023, I was beyond excited to play it. By then, I'd completely gotten into the series, even making my 2D Metroid Extravaganza videos by then. My memories of the Prime series mostly consisted of Prime 3 and playing the first two with a guide. However, this time, I was determined to play without one. I knew how this series worked now, at least in 2D. I knew the tricks up its sleeve and the overall process to play, so I went in hoping that I would pick everything up in 3D more naturally. And come release day, I was so glad to be 100% right. My first and now second playthrough of Metroid Prime Remastered are two of the most enjoyable playthroughs of any game I have ever experienced. Prime 1 is by far the best in the series for me. I thought Prime 3 was originally because it was so much more accessible and I was able to play it completely naturally. But Prime 1 just does absolutely everything right if you know how the series plays. The combat, the environment design, the puzzles, the pacing, the movement, the graphics, the music, everything is as close to perfect as it could be. That isn't to say it's my favourite game of all time or anything, but I think it is the closest thing to the perfect execution of not only a Metroid game, but of the Metroidvania genre in general. After replaying it for this video, I cannot fault it beyond I wish the elevator loading screens were a bit quicker, and that by the end, enemies are more of an annoyance than an actual threat. At least if you get lots of energy tanks anyway. Gameplay-wise, it is buttery smooth thanks to its finely tuned controls and its locked 60 frames per second performance. The original GameCube version is a little more finicky to play since it only used one analog stick for movement and relied on its Z-targeting style lock-on system to aim at enemies. But the trilogy version allowed for Wii Remote pointer controls, and the remastered version uses traditional first-person twin analog stick controls, allowing everything to just feel a bit more natural. With the remastered version, you can even swap between the GameCube, Wii, and twin stick style controls, allowing you to decide how you want to play. Since Metroid Prime is a puzzle adventure game first, and a first-person shooter a distant second, you can still use the lock-on system with any control scheme. And for 99% of the time, for my playthroughs, I did just that. You aren't necessarily going for accuracy here, but instead having to work out the mini puzzle of how to defeat each enemy, some of which can be defeated simply by shooting Samus's arm cannon as fast as possible, but others require you to aim for specific spots, such as their backs, or use specific weapons, such as missiles or the 4 different beam types to bring them down. Each enemy encounter is a fun little puzzle, at least most of the time. As I mentioned, one of the only things about this title, and in fact pretty much every Metroid game 3D or not, enemies become a little tedious towards the end. I ended up just running past most of them by the last quarter. It's not a horrific issue or anything, but I find enemies just don't increase in threat and don't reward you enough for defeating them in the later parts of this 15 to 20 hour campaign. This isn't exclusive to the Metroid series, but I do hope the developers find a way to mitigate this in a future entry. Prime 4 sadly doesn't fix the issue either, so it's not sorted out yet. Thankfully, the boss fights avoid that issue completely. While not necessarily the most visually exciting boss designs, Metroid Prime does make each one feel like a big event, and significant within the overall gameplay. Each time you defeat a boss, you will unlock new abilities and access to new routes that make each one have a rewarding conclusion. They aren't the most challenging bosses in gaming history, but they are all challenging enough to be fun and require you to constantly keep your focus in order to defeat them. My favourite is probably the Meta Ridley fight, a challenging and dramatic pre-final boss battle that had been teased since the start of the story. The puzzles and exploring of the world also never get old. Even though there is lots of backtracking, as with any Metroid game, the environments are just so much fun to quickly jump through and enough shortcuts open up throughout that it stays enjoyable right to the end. You start to challenge yourself to speed through the world, and even though I don't speedrun these games, I do get the feeling that I am as I strive to get quicker as you upgrade Samus's arsenal and equipment. Speaking of, the suit upgrades here are some of the most iconic in Metroid. The Grapple Beam, Morph Ball, Spider Ball, Charge Shot, and almost every classic ability is here, and all of them are flawlessly converted into 3D. The selection of new charge beams add more to the puzzle aspect of the combat, and the new visors allow for even more puzzle opportunities throughout the world, each of which are unique and get used frequently. Using the scan visor to scan the environment for dozens of log entries also allows you to get a lot of lore for Talon 4, and overall give the deeper side of Metroid Prime's story. At surface level, Prime doesn't appear to have that much of a story. Once Samus lands on Talon 4, there isn't any cutscenes or really much story to speak of, at least in a traditional sense. However, by using the scan visor and just generally looking around the world, you can learn so much more about the story, such as the experiments of the space pirates with the deadly phazon substance they found here. There is also the extensive history of the Chozo species who lived on Talon 4, how they all died off, and what they did to try and stop the phazon meteorite 50 years ago. One of my favourite collections of log entries speaks of the experiments the space pirates conducted to try and copy Samus's abilities. The one which speaks of the horrors of attempting the Morph Ball being one of the darkest and most interesting to read. It's also great to find these logs and how the pirates have managed to copy Samus's different charge beams, and then soon after that, fighting the pirates with those powers. It's a great way of foreshadowing later parts of the gameplay that you can completely ignore if you want to, or just miss by accident. Normally I find these kind of log entries in games really annoying to read, especially when the writing is tiny and they go on for ages. But Prime balances perfectly the size of the text and the length of them to never make them tedious. The subtlety of Metroid Prime's storytelling is such a strong element of its overall design, as are the environment, graphics, music and sound design, which all go hand in hand to make a fantastic world, and it's even more prevalent with the remastered version. Graphically, they speak for themselves. The original is one of the best looking games of the GameCube generation, with impressive environmental details and lighting effects. But it was on a console that was powerful in comparison to its competition at the time, so it's not shocking to see that it is one of the most impressive showcases for that generation. The remastered version released for the Nintendo Switch 1, however, is for a far weaker system than anything else that was on the market, and yet it still looks absolutely incredible. Graphically, it wouldn't look that out of place on a PS5, and it's by far the most impressive looking title on the Nintendo Switch, while also having absolutely flawless performance. It's a shame it isn't in full 1080p, and it definitely deserves a Switch 2 upgrade to get it to 4K, but overall the graphics and art style are stunning, which is only amplified by the beautifully designed environments. There is nothing particularly unique about Metroid Prime's choice of locales. There's a snow area, lava area, grass and temple-esque area. They're all nothing new, but each of them is meticulously designed to include huge levels of detail, and each one tells a story, especially the Phazon mines and stunning Fendora drifts. Each area also has great sound design that amplifies the feel of each one and gives so much character to them. And of course it's all topped off with incredibly atmospheric and catchy music by Kenji Yamamoto, one of Nintendo's most impressive composers. My two favourites are the title screen theme with its heavy sci-fi and mechanical tones, and the Fendora Drifts theme, which has a much more peaceful and gentle pace to it. Overall, Metroid Prime is one of the closest games to perfect that I can think of. I don't believe there is a perfect video game, or that there will ever be one. There will always be something you can do to tweak the gameplay or the pacing to make it just that bit better. Some do complain about Prime's final moments, a section where you have to explore the map to find hidden artifacts using clues. Some say it is needlessly added to extend the length of the playtime, and well, they are technically right. The developers have openly admitted this. But I actually find the section quite fun. It's not like the clues are particularly complex, and all it does is make you explore the map one last time with all of Samus's powers. You can then collect up any items and scans you have missed, and since you are so powered up, you can do it incredibly quickly. It took me less than an hour. On multiple playthroughs, you can also remember where they are, and know that you can grab most of them long before the end. So even in Metroid Prime's so-say worst section, it is still a lot of fun to me. I'm sure there is something you could do to improve Prime 1. As I said earlier, the enemies do become background noise by the end, so they could be made a bit more dangerous in the later half. But otherwise, this is one of the closest games to perfect I've ever experienced. and in my opinion is the best Metroid and Metroidvania ever released. It also perfectly sets up its sequels, keeping the threat of Phazon going and setting up one of Samus's most iconic villains. I hope one day the development team at Retro can surpass this absolute masterpiece. But until then, I am happy to keep playing Metroid Prime Remastered and its fantastic sequels. Speaking of which, next time I jump into Retro Studios' follow-up to one of the highest rated games of all time. A fantastic continuation of the series that is almost as highly revered as its predecessor. I'll catch you next time for Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Phil, and I'm the creator of the Pixel Tavern. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you're not already, please subscribe to the channel for more videos like this one, including almost all of the Zelda games in the same style. Make sure to click the bell icon as well if you want YouTube to actually tell you I released a new video. Please leave a comment on your thoughts of Metroid Prime 1 and its incredible remaster. What did you think of the change to 3D? Do you want to see a third-person Metroid Prime? And what about a VR Metroid Prime? It does feel made for it. Until next time though, I hope you keep well, and thank you very much for watching.